My name is Courtney Dealy. I'm the manager of our national training team here at Boys Town. My background is in education. I taught for over 12 years, taught a variety of age groups from the littles all the way through high school. So I've seen a lot of behavior over time. And I loved the reason what drew me to Boys Town is because I implemented our Boys Town education model in my classroom at my school, and I saw the outcome. I saw the positivity. I saw the environment and culture and connection it made with my students. And so I was drawn to that. And Boys Town always just kind of jives with my own personal philosophy. We adopted our daughter when she was 18 months old. She is now 13. So I'm all about the teenage sass. We've got that going on at my house. And so just the way that Boys Town treats kids and the way that we talk to kids and we teach them, it's something that I've loved of how that plays out in the classroom.
Awesome. Well, Courtney, I know we're happy to have you. Um, as an introduction to myself, I'm Timothy Campbell. I work here with Courtney on our national training side. And so super excited to get into the conversation today because believe it or not, we're already looking at back to school. And so today's just a conversation on how to prepare as we exit the summer months and get back into the mindset of the school year. So I know you've got the experience in the classroom, also raising your own daughter. And so we're looking forward to hearing from you, Courtney. So why don't you start us off here as we start the conversation of starting a successful school year?
Well, thanks, Timothy. I appreciate that. So I really kind of think about just, okay, how do you set that structure? How do you make it so things go smoothly? And I think more so than any other time, my mind thinks to predictability, safety, and structure, because that's always what we've needed at the beginning of the school year, but even more so than ever before because of the effects of COVID and what the toll, the mental health and behavioral toll that has taken on our students and the behaviors that we've seen and the struggles kind of that we're having, that predictability, safety, and structure is of utmost most importance. And really, my mind thinks back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that the very basic level is we all need food, we need shelter, we need clothing. But right on top of that, that next most basic level is safety, predictability, structure, say, uh, to be free of fear. And so when we create structures, when we think through those little procedures of how do I want kids to enter the classroom, how do I want them to exit the classroom, that is creating clarity, structure, predictability for our students that helps reduce that anxiety and helps things to go well.
So kids are exiting summer. They've been free. They're coming in the classroom. The word that sticks out to me is the safety. Where does safety come in with these kids that are entering your classroom? Where does that play?
It's a great question. It's safety on all kinds of levels: safety, emotional safety, physical safety. And so when we think through things of how we want them to enter our classroom, when we think through of how are we going to have them seated, what's that structure going to look like? Am I going to have a seating chart and arrangement where I already have their names in predetermined spots? Or am I going to come up with a randomized seating so that I can put them in places, even though I don't know them, that I know that might have some good outcomes. So here's a little story. Before I taught high school, so I'd never taught high school before. I was going from a very far jump. I had been teaching early ed, and I was going to high school. So I was very nervous, as you can imagine. So I stayed up looking at all of the chats online, like anything of any tips anyone had. I read it because I wanted to know it. So, in my high school Spanish classroom, I created little kind of icons and that I put at the corner of every desk in my classroom because of course we had block scheduling at the time. So I had 4 periods a day. And I didn't know my students. They would just show up and they would come into my class. But I assumed, being teenagers, being children who are social creatures, they would appear at my doorway with their friends. So I created these icons, the flags of Spanish speaking countries, put them on desks in a particular way, and had them in my hands stacked so that when they came in with their friends, I would give them to them in a manner that they would be sitting randomly across the room from the person they walked in on. And that is structure,
Wow.
predictability, thinking through those details so that I could give them that separation a little bit and just kind of have a little bit of that control over that environment to make sure they're ready to learn.
Yeah. So that's neat. As I learn more and more, I find out that teachers are a little tricky. So that's an awesome trick. So you mentioned high school. So when you're talking structure and seating, you're not just talking, I think elementary, I think smaller students, but you're saying even for high school students, you're having that structure. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that through for sure. And not everybody has that seating chart, and you have to determine what that's going to look like for you. And even if you don't have that, there has to be some structure around a free seating chart. What are the parameters that children have? What is the expectations that we're expecting from them? Anytime we have that clarity and that structure of expectations and procedures, we're going to create that safety for students, and it just frees up their mental energy and lowers their anxiety to free them up for learning, for that academic learning that we're
Yeah,
looking for from them.
you're right. And I think this is a good time for, us teachers and people that are overseeing these children is in reality, this may be some of the only structure a lot of these kids may experience. So having that consistent structure.
Yeah, for some kids it is the only structure they have. We don't know, and that's the thing that always I'm reminded of frequently is we don't know who we have even if we're looking at a child in front of us. They might come from a rougher background than they're ever letting on, or vice versa. We just don't know what we're getting, and we have to come ready to meet their needs. And just thinking through those details, having clear expectations, having procedures at the ready helps that. And kids are kids, people are people, even kids coming from a strong background, maybe knowing some of those things, if given an inch, sometimes they might take a mile. So we still have to create our environment in a structured way that'll support learning. And these are some of the ways that we can do it.
Awesome. Awesome. So kids are seated, right? We've got them in our classroom, whether it's randomized or, we have it predetermined. Talk to me a little bit about after once the students are in and we're greeting our students and walk me through what that might look like.
Sure, I'm gonna back us up for just a quick
Yeah.
second because all that seating business kind of happens first just in the mental energy, like I said, just kind of being crafty as what are my expectations? What do I expect? How do I want this to go? As students are entering it, it is important that we greet them at the door. There's a lot of research out there about greeting at the door. And one of my favorites, because people might ask, so I'm going to tell you now. It is from the Journal of Applied Behavioral Analysis, and it's called "The Effects of Teacher Greetings on Student On-Task Behavior." And I love this journal article, and it talks about the positive effects of just standing at the door and greeting students, because we all know it builds relationships. We all know it sets the tone positively. It helps us to see the kid, and first of all, just create a positive, uh, just kind of touch point, so to speak,
Sure.
because again, we don't know where this child is coming from. So let's get a positive touch point in their day because every child deserves to be seen,
Yeah.
greeted, and heard. It also gives us a little bit of a litmus test of, ooh, they look like they're having a rough morning, and just kind of to check in, especially for kids who might be struggling or to help meet their needs first thing. But what this particular research article says is that when we greet students at the door, that more students are on task in class and they get on task more quickly, which actually pays academic dividends at the end. And so we get more academic time and we have more academic achievement in response to just standing at the door greeting them.
Yeah. And I love that. So it's greeting them at the door. It's kind of that touch point, and it's kind of a set for you and the student, right? Like you're able to gauge how your students are coming in that day. And it also just helps them do a reset in their mind. I'd be interested, I wish we could do a show of hands because I wonder if that's a skill that maybe as a new teacher, we're like, hey, I'm going to greet my student every day. But then I wonder over time if we kind of lose that after over years of in your experience, what do you see? Is that a problem that new teachers have, or is it everybody, or is it
No,
something that we just need to get back to?
I think that's a great question. I just think it's something that when we know the importance of it, it can help us to make sure it happens because I know in talking with a lot of principals, they know that that's really important and a lot of teachers do too. It's just the nitty-gritty of the day that sometimes precludes a teacher from getting out there because you got to transition things. Okay, I had, economics this class period and so now I got to switch to AP government or something and so now I've got to get everything turned over for the next group of kids. And so it's figuring out how can I make that so I can be at that spot to greet students. It helps the hallway go better too, allows us to build relationships with kids in the hallway. It's just got a lot of positive outcomes, but it's just that the day to day, it's easy to kind of wander off to one side of where we know that we really should be because it really does help kids.
Yeah. And that's awesome. And I do love that point. I feel like we could talk about that even a lot more just in the whole afterthought of this post kind of pandemic world that we live in, all the more important reason to have that initial first good impression that your student has with their teachers. So,
Yeah, and I hear a lot of schools talking with our team about the hallways, a lot of hallway concern. And if we can get people out there and get people in the hallway greeting kids and saying those positive things, it helps to take those positive relationships that we have with our students within the four walls and puts it into the hallway as well and starts to just be that face that kids see because again, we might be that one person in that child's life. And so if we can be a positive face at the door, greeting kids that we may not even really know well, it helps to extend that.
all right, man, I love that. I love that. Let's move on past that just a little bit.
Can
Uh,
I mention Jasmine's chat first? Jasmine chatted to us and it helps you enjoy the job, that greeting because it gives a connection to the students. I agree. That
awesome.
connection is huge.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jasmine.
No, that's great. And obviously it sounds too that maybe Jasmine, and I'm sure many others, do that, seem to practice that. And so that's awesome. And maybe that's a challenge, if we're doing takeaways from this, maybe that's a challenge. What's something basic that maybe I got away from that I need to start doing again.
Hmm.
So that's awesome. I really like that. Thank you, Jasmine. And again, if anybody wants to add to the chat, please feel free to do so. We'll try to get to the chat as we go through and answer questions as they pop up. We'll definitely leave a time at the end for any questions as well. Thank you. Moving past the greeting just a little bit, talk to me kind of what's the next step? What are we looking at, Courtney?
Excellent. So the next step is transitioning students into learning. So if you are in an elementary, room where you're just classroom where you get kids just one time in the day in that morning. Well, I say that I know that you have lots of transitions after your specials or itineraries or academic arts, whatever your school district calls them. There are also those transitions as well as after lunch. But having with those transitions or passing periods at the middle and high school level with those transitions, having some kind of academic piece, whether you call it a warm up, a bell work, do now. In my Spanish class, I called it a para empezar, just that let's begin. Some kind of academic kind of intro or kind of slide into the day. And what it does is it helps kids, it gives purpose, an academic purpose to that everybody's filtering in. And it also allows the brain to switch. So whatever they were doing before, where they were coming from music and now they're coming back from their music class into your, third grade math class, math lesson, or whether they were coming from band, their middle or high school band, and now they're sliding into your AP geometry class, where the brain needs a moment to transition in from that hallway or from that other learning environment. The hallway can sometimes be so loud and chaotic and kind of a social just a lot of social things going on in a hallway and coming into, okay, now it's time to focus. We have different expectations. We want to be quiet. We want to make sure and learn. It allows that transition to happen a lot faster. And it makes it more likely that kids will get there on time because if they know that the academic learning is happening right away, they are less likely to wander about for a while because they know things are getting started right away, especially if it's engaging.
Yeah,
So
that's neat.
definitely suggest that.
Yeah, and again, these are things that you do and you've done them in your past, and I think as myself as an adult, I had meetings today, right? We did some interviews, we did some video shoots, and then all of a sudden, boom, we got a webinar, right? And I have to I have to remember, hey, I got to be friendly for the camera, right? And so for an adult, we make those transitions all the time. But sometimes for kids, like you said, right? Like, as the adult, we have to help them make that transition. And that's really what we're doing, right? We're helping them make that transition from outside time. And we do that through it could be an activity or it could be a warm up challenge. So,
And it goes back to that predictability, safety, and structure. If they kids know every day they are to come in quietly and they get started on their bell work, and maybe their bell work is on their, Google Classroom, or maybe it's in the blue spiral notebook or wherever it is, they know, or to pick up that handout on this corner, they know every day this is where it's at. Here's how they do it. Here's how they turn it in or how it's checked. And here's how it translates to a grade. If they know that and it's upfront and it's clear every day, then it creates that structure and that
yeah.
safety and really helps pull in those behaviors. There's just less room for those off task behaviors.
Sure. If you're on the webinar and you're listening, I'd be interested to hear maybe what some of your warm-ups are. What you're currently doing in your classroom, or maybe you're saying, hey, for this season, I want to try something different. So if you've researched or read something that you want to try or that you've been doing, drop it in the chat. I'd like to see those. Courtney, go ahead.
Mhm.
I don't want to cut you off there. But so we do the warm up, and again, there's different warm ups throughout the day, right? But this initial one is the beginning of the day, beginning of the class, and so we get the students engaged and ready to learn, right? And then talk to me about what are some classroom expectations, and are they just known? Do I need to post them? What's that look like?
Great question. Even when kids have done school for many years in the past, every year is a new year. Heck, every day is a new day. So having clear expectations is extremely important. Teaching them at the beginning of the year is very important. And having them posted is really important too. A lot of teachers are really good about coming up with expectations or class compacts as a team, as a community to get the input of students. Because anytime we have the opportunity to share our voice and have our input heard, the more likely we are to take care of that community and honor that compact. So a lot of teachers are really good at that. I have to laugh at myself because there was one year, so every year I had to take down all of my stuff off the walls. So if they needed to paint, they could. And there was one year somehow my rules posters, my expectations didn't get back on the wall. I'm not sure. I didn't put it back up. I somehow overlooked it. And that year was a little bit rougher than other years. And it's like, well, Courtney, you didn't have it right there. You didn't have it to point to, like, oh no, it's not Miss Daly who's setting all this. It's just this is how we comport ourselves in this space, in this place, here and with each other. And so definitely having it posted is just helpful to everyone, and it makes it more objective and just again creates that predictability and structure. And I would say the same with consequences. That's sometimes that people feel different ways about it. I think posting consequences at Boys Town, we say posting consequences is really important, both the positive and the negative consequences. And being a positive, predictable model, sometimes that might be shocking, like, really, post negative consequences. Well, it's just because we want to be upfront. We want to be clear with kids. When you do things well, you're likely to experience these things. You might have additional free time. They're going to get praise. You probably are going to get more choices, additional privileges, these kinds of things. And if you make choices that aren't so great and aren't according to our expectations, we're probably going to have a conversation. You might need to talk with me after class or after school. There might be contact home. Just having that just upfront with kids lets them know these are important. These are the things you can expect. And it doesn't have to be at first, then this, then this. It's just these are kind of the things, the outcomes you can expect as a student in this class.
Awesome. I like that. Definitely having them posted. And again, we don't post the rules to control. It's not about control. It's not about control, but it is about setting that expectation. And kids are looking, for what are we allowed to do, and give us that consistency. And so I like that. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of relationships with your students. What does that look like? And sometimes relationship can be, we say, well, we want to have that teacher and student type relationship, and so we're the authority. But what does that really look like? And how can we make it more personal?
I think that's great. That's a good question. Relationships are of utmost importance. So I'm just going to take us back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs again, actually. Right on top of that second layer, which is that structure, predictability, and safety, is relationships and belonging. So we need relationships and belonging. So we need to know that we're cared about. What people say often, people don't care what you know until they know that you care, and it's kind of a trite saying that still holds true, though. Um, I think relationships are so important. Some of the things that I keep in mind that may be helpful to people is that all children deserve to know that they have a place. They have a place in your space. Again, we don't know who we're getting, and everyone is in our room for a reason and a purpose. And kids need to know that they're seen, that they're heard, and that their opinions and their input are valued, and that the diversity in their room is welcomed and has something positive outcomes for everybody. I love there's a chat that came through. What strategies do you use to engage shy students? I think that kind of comes in here because when we are building relationships with kids, it's important that we build relationships, student teacher relationships. It's also important that we build relationships with their families, but it's
Mm,
also important that we teach kids how to have relationships with each other and with the community, because bullying is a big term that we want to
sure.
make sure that we are teaching kids to not do that, right? Those positive behaviors. How do we teach them to do those positive alternative behaviors? One of the ways is that it's by teaching them that every child has a place and every child is valued. When I started my school year up, I like to tell my students that every single one of us in this room has something to learn from every other child in this room.
Yeah,
And each of us has something to teach every other person in this room.
yeah,
And that was our job that year, to teach and learn from each other. And we've got to teach kids those skills of how to relate to each other, of how to see that importance and value that importance in each other.
yeah,
And as far as engaging shy students, I think it starts by just carving a space for all students. And some other ways, just to tag on to Alicia's question here in the chat, is sometimes kids need heads up
yes,
that they're going to be called on or asked next. And so if you've got a student who's shy, or it's also a really good strategy for who are learning English, for students who are learning English, is just giving the heads up, hey, I'm going to call on this person and then I'll come to you.
yep,
Is that okay? And so doing that gives kids a heads up and gives them that agency of kind of, okay, I've got this. I know I have the heads up
yeah.
about that.
I love
Did,
that.
is, did
Yeah,
that answer your community building and relationship building question?
yeah. No, yes, that was great, and I love that because I know I had a student that I know he was smart, very very smart. But if you called on him and wasn't expecting it, all of a sudden he felt like all the eyes were on him and he
Right.
couldn't. So giving that heads up, and I would say, hey, you know what, I'm going to call on you during this subject, or whatever. So I love that. We had another comment come through, and boy, how many times this past season have we had this conversation, right? This year was a great example of how kids have lost that skill of sitting and engaging in academic work. Teachers that started with looser expectations had a harder time gaining classroom control later on. And the ones that had them posted and kept them consistent had better classroom control. And honestly, that sums up this webinar, right? Like that's a perfect example. Speak to that, and that's not who the individual that wrote this airs. You're not alone in that or in seeing that. That's something that we've seen a lot of. Is that not true, Courtney?
Yeah, it's been a common thing, I think, kind of true over many years, that beginning with looser expectations, it's a lot harder to regain them in the end. But beginning with clear boundaries and expectations really does actually free up academic time and allows for looseness to happen. So don't mean harsh with expectations. I don't mean being harsh with them, just clear, providing structure and boundaries, because
Yeah,
kids thrive within those boundaries. So I appreciate that
yeah,
comment for sure. The other thing that I heard this year that was really interesting is that kids are lacking stamina for each other. So little things little annoyances that they would have been fine within the past, like if somebody's walking and accidentally bumps you in the hallway, like in the past, like, oh, my bad. That was it. That would be done. Now it's, comments and, oh gosh, don't, why are you up on me? And it gets kind of bigger. It's like, well, my goodness. So again, I think back to connecting kids to each other, connecting them
yeah,
to the adults, and then teaching them what they need to know to be able to just let it slide off your back. Just that assuming that positive intention of it was a mistake and how to apologize or how to say I'm sorry, and just teaching them those skills to be able to have better interpersonal relationships with each other will really helps create that good beginning of that school year.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I want to encourage everybody, as we enter back into full society and school and all that good stuff. There are studies that are coming out now that we have to realize that our average stresses of everybody, there's a new average of stress levels, and so keeping that in mind. I want to move on, just for sake of time. Let's talk about some skills. When I say skills and you say skills, I know what you mean. But we speak it every day. So talk to me a little bit about some skills and why are teaching skills important, especially early on in the
Yeah.
school year?
Absolutely. So, social skills are those interpersonal skills of how we relate to each other, how we have a successful day, right? And then those social emotional skills are those skills that also have some emotional content in them, that emotional component is what I meant to say. And so, we want to teach kids those social emotional skills so that they can self-regulate and so that they can interact well with each other and with us. And so, when we talk about skills, it's really important to have a school-wide kind of expectations of skills that our teachers, that as a building, as a school, that these are the skills that are important to us. Even if it's just this handful, these five are the ones this year that we want to make sure and equip our kids with, empower our children by intentionally teaching them these skills, these social skills, so that they're ready to be good learners and good citizens. And sometimes those skills are accepting feedback, both positive and negative feedback, or working well with others, or asking for help. A lot of negative behavior comes sometimes for an inability of not knowing how to ask for help. Think about all the times that you have to ask for help in a day. I'm helping a local high school here. We're looking toward implementing the Voice Down education model starting this school year. And we were looking at the school-wide setting expectations that they're getting ready, and they've got this beautiful plan. So we're talking about putting skills in there. So they've got what, 1,500 students, and they're teaching the students, okay, if you need this, here's the person you go to. If you need, if you have medical need, you go to the nurse. Here's how you get the nurse. It's like, well, we got to ask permission to be able to go to the nurse. They need to know how to ask for help from the nurse or the IT person
Yeah,
if there's a problem with their Chromebook. And so these skills are what help them interact with each other and empower kids to be successful, to feel confident, and to be able to navigate the world, because the world is pretty stressful. Like you said, there's a new baseline of stress.
sure.
And so we've got to be able to teach kids how to ask for help, to get the help that they need so that it does alleviate their stress. Being able to help them have self-control strategies and stay calm strategies so that they can navigate the different stressors in life. So teaching kids skills on a school-wide level is important because it just demonstrates that these are what we think as a whole learning community are successful learner skill excuse me success skills of a successful learner. There we go, words are hard. Skills of a successful learner. But then also every classroom is different. Every teacher and their subject might be different, and their students that they have in front of them, the skills they need for that classroom might be different. If you got in a debate classroom, we're going to talk especially a lot about disagreeing with others and how to do that appropriately.
Yeah.
And so having that ability within your own classroom to teach skills that are relevant to your students is really important too. Again, just to equip them to be successful.
Right. And sometimes we see that too, where students, are really good in a teacher's class, right? They're really good for Miss Daly, but then they come to Mr. Campbell and oh my gosh, it's chaos. And and sometimes it's, well, I like that teacher. But the idea behind the skills is it doesn't matter your environment, right? Environments change, your teachers change, but skills stay the same.
Right.
And when thinking of the Boys Town model, we have a lot of skills that we teach when we go into a school. Name a few skills, and I don't want to give away the gravy, right? But name a few skills that here at Boys Town and just some of the models that we teach in the schools.
We've got disagreeing appropriately,
Yeah,
accepting feedback or accepting criticism and consequences, We have following instructions, asking for help, making an apology, controlling emotions. One in our positive foundation, so our workshop for young folks is trying when it's hard. All really important skills. So, gosh, is that enough? Do I need
No,
more?
that's hey, it's good. The idea is though, there the reason why we teach skills is we spend a lot of time teaching academics, right? Hey, there they are, right?
There they are. We have
We,
a book of 183
yeah,
task analyzed skills in this book, Teaching Social Skills to Youth. So there are a lot. There are fun. Some is about avoiding the drug and alcohol use, and lots of
sure.
different skills, advanced
Yeah,
and basic too.
I love that. So we spend a lot of time in all day really teaching our academics, but having purposeful teaching time of a skill is just as important. Um,
Well, yeah, and it can be done in that moment too,
sure,
because so I also taught social studies. I said I taught a lot of different range of ages and subjects, and so we do a lot of social studies projects. And so I need them to do this project, but in order to do it, their skills that they need. They're going to be working in a group. They need to be able to work with others. So I teach
right,
them how to work with others using the skill language right ahead of time. So it was in that moment, quick and easy,
yeah,
and it was tiered as well. I had 2 kiddos that struggled a little bit more than others for different reasons than each other, but the outcome was similar. And so I would just pull them over, have that quick little conversation when the rest of the class could just do a prompt of, hey, make sure you're working in your groups. I'm going to come around. They needed a little more than that. So I'd
sure,
give them some more skill teaching and language in that moment, providing really a tier 2 support for them that was easy, low level for me,
yeah.
and really had a positive outcome for their learning and for the class environment.
That's awesome. So I think that kind of addresses Alicia had asked, hey, do you have any suggestions on how to teach? And I think you kind of address that, right? You can do that in the moment, providing that tier two type attention for that student. And of course, there are other ways that we can apply those. Jasmine had made a comment that these social skills also help keep them safe because they become more knowledgeable on how to read situations and people and how to say no or pass stresses by, right? And that's very important. And being able to read a room, right?
Yeah.
When are we supposed to be quiet? When are we supposed to, stay on task? And so that
Yeah.
absolutely helps. And of course, Susan, hey, we love the books too. So we use the books, love them. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know we're coming to, again, being cognizant of time with the idea of starting off the school year successfully. Um, the importance of having a schedule. Let's talk briefly about the importance of having a schedule. And are you talking classroom schedule, personal schedule? What do you mean by schedule?
Just mean that it relates back to that predictability instruction in the classroom. The kids need to know what their schedule is. If they need to know what day they have this special. They need to know what time period is period 2, 3, 4. They need to know those things. And it's important to have it posted of what we're doing today. What's the agenda today? And so just even having a little bit that these are the things we're doing today. First of all, for anyone who's taught, what is the first question you often get asked if you don't have it posted? What are we doing today?
Yeah,
Every day. And so I've always just got to go. It was just there. It was always there. And in fact, kids never really asked me because it was always posted up there and they knew exactly what we were doing that day. They knew what their homework was or what it was, what it would be, or if they didn't have any at all, it was always there posted. And that's the beauty of Google Classroom. Many schools use that now. And so just having a consistent system of communicating those things with students when we have homework, when things are due, what we're doing today, and having that, like I said, that bell work or that warm up just to slide into class and transition more easily. It creates that structure and that predictability because kids are looking for that. And that's how we free up that time for academics because there is so much that goes on in a learning day.
yeah. Okay, I love that. I want to throw out there to everybody that may be listening in these next few minutes as we wrap things up. If you haven't put your question in, please feel free to do that. We'll definitely address before we end the webinar here today. Courtney, a couple last thoughts here. What information maybe do I need to know as I enter the school year here? What's some information?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think, read if you're new to your school. read the handbook, read what's expected of you, read what's expected of the kids. I remember doing that one time and I said, "Oh no, we're not supposed to be wearing this this shirt that I'm wearing. Like, is that, oh goodness." So just reading those things, making sure you know that. And just I think there's a lot of value in thinking through the particulars of a day of how you've got to move students around and what do I need to know? Do I know how do I know where to direct them if they have a question about their lunch account? Do I know where to send them if they've got a question about IT? What do I need to do to make sure I have a trash can? I walked in my classroom 3 days before school started, and I don't have a trash can. Like, how do I get that? Where do I get that? And that might seem very basic to some people, but my very first year teaching, we didn't have the cafeteria at our school. It was at a sister school. We were in kind of a transition building. My very first year teaching, and I didn't know where the cafeteria was. I didn't know how to take my student. I'm like, well, shoot, I should have thought through that little particular before day one, before go time. Another preschool classroom didn't have a trash can, and the children 4-year-olds were putting boxes of milk cartons that were half full still kind of on the floor. So that was kind of a mess, did you think? So kind of gross. But thinking through those little particulars of just a day of what do information might I need to know? Just kind of thinking through that.
I love that. That's good. Question came in, and it just reads: should you leave the time off the poster? So you were talking about putting your kind of your schedule, right? What are we doing today? Well, here's what it looks like. So should we leave the time off? We had some kids that really struggled with not transitioning at the exact time that was on the schedule, but other students
Yeah.
that enjoyed the time estimate. And I could see that either way, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, you said we were done at 12:45 and we're still going, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Courtney?
That's a great question. And so I'm not sure how particular with the time and the minute you're thinking. So I'll do my best to answer the question. When it comes to a schedule, so I'll answer how I might be thinking this like if it's an elementary classroom and you've got the times that these are our specials time, these are lunch. Yeah, we want to have those times on there. Those are fixed throughout a day. So we might be 1 minute before or after, and we can teach kids that skill of being flexible. It is a hard skill for kids for sure. My daughter has ADHD and she is very connected to her watch, very connected to her watch. And we're like, people say about 12:30. It's okay that it's 12:33. So I have this conversation. So your question makes me giggle because I know this on a deep personal level.
Sure.
But we've got to have the times on that because those are the times, kind of that functioning time. As far as when it's within our own time frame of it's probably 5 minutes for the bell work and then 20 minutes to work on the 10 minutes for the direct instruction and 5 minutes for the do it by yourself or whatever the time frame is. There's no need to put those particular timeframes on because there is so much variability, as you and I know, just because of the number of questions that kids have, the number of interruptions over the intercom, those variables we can't really control. And so, but we can also teach kids the skill of being flexible and adapting to change. And that just really helps kids to equip them for those moments. Because I get it, for some kids, it's very stressful to them. But giving kids prompts and heads up before transitions help, also teaching them those procedures and routines of how to transition from this to this helps as well to reduce some of that.
Yeah, I love it. And then, of course, Alicia, that's obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but that's a very helpful tip, right? So we can always prompt them to, we'll have bell in 3 minutes, or, here in a few minutes, we're going to be ending this and starting this. And so that's very good. Um, Speaking of starting and ending, we started and it's already almost time to end. So I want to ask one more question, and then we'll kind of bring this to a close. Um, Entering the school year, we're just a couple weeks away, really, from everybody being back in seats, and so that's just wild to think about. Um, you know, I think of my sister who left this morning at 7:30. She's headed to Hawaii. She's going to teach her second year as a teacher, and then I also have family members who have been teaching for many years. Here at Boys Town, we offer some free resources, and we offer a lot of resources. Where can we go? Is there a website that we can go to for any of those resources? Where can I find those?
So we've got a website, boystowntraining.org. So I would go to boystowntraining.org, and then there's several tabs, and I would click on the resources tab. And in the resources tab, there are several different options and resources, some free and some for a fee. So I believe the webinar like this might be available for free sometime down the road. There are some lesson plans that are offered for free and other skill posters and things that are up there, so you can download those that you would like. Oh, thank you so much, Jackson, for putting that up there. boystowntraining.org. Gosh, I'm trying to think what other resources are there. I know the lesson plans, and I know some of the posters. But there are some other webinars too. There are also on-demand learning modules, and those are for fee. They have different particular topics, most of them about an hour. So yeah, those might help.
Awesome. I love it.
We also, oh, sorry, I'm
Yeah,
sorry I cut
go
you
ahead.
off, Timothy. We also have, I think that on that resource page is a link to our Boys Town Press page as well. And that's where we've got a lot of books like the Task Analyze Skills,
Awesome.
teaching social skills to youth. We've also got a lot of books teaching social emotional skills, whether it's just straight up lesson plans you want, we've got those in tools for teaching social skills, or books that weave in the social skills for kids. We've got those that are really good. Okay, I have to do one plug since we are talking about, the social emotional learning of kids. These Kat McGrady books are really, really, really good. The Building Resiliency in Youth is more just kind of the information for us. But then if you've got younger kids, then we've got Building Resiliency in Children. It's good in an activity guide. And then Building Resiliency, oh gosh, I'm going to mess up the last word, but it's a guide for older kids.
Okay.
And it's just really, really good because it helps address those social emotional skills for kids. And she's just fantastic.
Awesome. All right. I love it. I want to bring it to a close. We talked about a lot of things. Just hit me real quick with the takeaway of why we want to start off. You said predictability, safety, and structure, right? And so bringing that back to this, or back to the beginning, everything that we talked about comes back to those three things. Is that right?
Yeah, it does.
Awesome.
Safety, predictability, and structure, creating that safety, creating those boundaries
Yeah.
so kids know what they can expect, and just making sure we create an inclusive environment for every child has a place and they know they're seen, heard, and appreciated.
I love it. And that's how you wrap things up. That was beautiful, Courtney. Thank you so much. I encourage everybody that's listening, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help. And I hope everybody has an amazing school year for 2022. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Bye.